Well, hello again, everybody. And as I said in the last video, I'm getting ready to talk about different ways that we're going on these trips and what we're doing, why we're doing it, and how you could look into doing something similar depending on your situation. The first thing I talked about in the last video was all about Hilton programs, and I talked about the Hilton Honors program and how good that's been. I'm not sponsored by Hilton or anything. I just have liked their program since 2008. But there are programs you should cross-compare from, my understanding, Marriott, Hyatt, and others. But as I said at the end of the last video, we were finding that we were going to start really wanting to do like 2 hotel rooms, and even if you have good prices for that, it can get kind of expensive. And we were finding that a lot of times the best we could do would be like a small suite at a hotel if there was an upgrade available. And, we were topping out at like going for 5 days, which is fine if you're driving somewhere and it's 6 or hours or something. But if you get on a plane and going overseas, if you're driving for a day or 2 or more to get where you want to go, it seems to me at least that you don't want to have a huge amount of travel as part of your actual trip time. And I'm specifically using the word trip here and not vacation for 2 reasons. One is part of this channel is talking about remote work and how you can work remotely when you're in a hotel room or other place. Basically looking at how does that work out for people. One of the ways that this working remote works for people is you need to have a laptop, right? Everybody's pretty much used to that. And either a lot of data on your phone or some kind of Wi-Fi hotspot. One of the things that my sister and I do is we do work remote. Because of that, it does mean that we can do trips that we're still working during the trip. And we basically can work during the day, and then at night or in the evening or on the weekend, we can go and enjoy what's in the area that we're going to see. So it does mean you're kind of taking less vacation, sometimes no vacation, sometimes you're doing half days depending on what you're wanting to do while you're in an area. But it does make certain things more important that maybe wouldn't be if you were just strictly vacationing. And the big one, of course, is internet access. To be able to work nowadays, especially remote, you need pretty reliable internet. Now, I'm not saying you need super fast internet, although that helps. But we've found that you can do most of what you need to do with a 4G or better internet connection. So that, again, could be a phone hotspot if you have enough hotspot data. It could be a hotspot plan with 50 or 100 gigs of data or unlimited data depending on the plan that you can get. And sometimes even you can get work to get you a hotspot plan. Sometimes you can't. It depends on your employer. But you also want to check into that. If you are working remote a lot of the time, see if your office would provide you with a mobile hotspot or a mobile connection. Some places will and some places won't, but it's certainly worth a try. If you have multiple people going who are adults and multiple people work remotely, one of the tricks that we've worked out, although it doesn't feel like a trick, but one of the things that we've done is we'll switch off who's driving and who's riding. And so we'll basically have one person driving for a while, and then the other person will be working on their laptop off their hotspot, and then switch. And depending on your job, a lot of times if you're working remote, again, you don't necessarily have like super fixed hours. So if you're in the car for 10 hours and you switch off 5 hours and 5 hours, you each can get that 5 hours of work off the hotspot, and then only take, couple hours of vacation for that day, or work when you get where you're going or before you leave. We have, even while it's not ideal, done some less important kind of work conference calls while in the car, and it does work fine. I wouldn't do it for like big client meetings or major presentations, of course, but if it's your daily quote unquote stand-up meeting, or if it's your weekly staff meeting, it can work fine. Usually in those cases, you don't even have to have your video on, or if you have your video on, they're not really looking for you to be presenting to anybody else, at least in my experience. And so the hotspot plans that I tend to like are from AT&T. They have relatively inexpensive ones in comparison to Verizon, but they have close to the same coverage. if you're on the interstates, you know, anybody's coverage is probably going to do, although I still occasionally heard things about T-Mobile not having the coverage, but I think that's more in the past than maybe it used to be. So I wouldn't necessarily say that like T-Mobile is right out, but I think AT&T kind of is the coverage versus price kind of hotspot, if you will. You can probably do a lot of work depending on what you're doing, as long as you have some kind of a table to work at, and I can make like a makeshift table easily enough in most hotel rooms with the chair that they have, and if they don't have a table provided, top of a dresser, top of the TV stand. And then in the absolute worst case scenario, I don't recommend this, but it can work, is kind of sitting up on the bed, just flat, you know, back against the headboard. And it's not super comfortable, but you can do that in an absolute pinch. The other nice thing about most of the hotels that I go to, although this has been going down actually, is that they do have a business center, and I've usually found that nobody's using the business center. Like, nobody goes in there. And you can go in there, and you have basically like little office space, and it just comes with, you know, staying there that night. So depending on, you know, if you're like me and my sister, you got two people who are working, one person can go down to the business center, one person can have a makeshift table in the hotel room. You both work or switch off, you know, whatever works for you. But it's something I never paid attention to before I started doing this traveling, going on trips while also work. The other thing to keep in mind is if you're going to be in the car, if you're going to be going to a business center in a hotel, if you're going to be trying to kind of sit on a hotel bed, those places often don't necessarily have wall plugs available. Now, more places are starting to add them all the time, but it's certainly not even 50% sure that you're going to see them there. Now, when you're right by the television, there's usually a plug there. They got to plug the TV in, but that can also be hard to get access to. So in all those cases, you know, I doubt anybody's watching this from the hotel industry, but if you are, think about providing places for people to charge their laptops. I don't know why this seems like a complete like revelation to the hotel industry, but having the spare plugs hidden behind the television that you can't pull out or at the very end or foot of a bed is really not that helpful in today's world for charging your cell phones, for charging your laptops, for charging your tablets, whatever else you're using. The tricks that I have used is twofold. One is taking a little power strip with me, or kind of like my own extension cord. Sometimes that can work and just solve your problem. But a lot of times when you're trying to do things like in the car or in the business center, again, it's not like you can really just kind of plug your power strip into something. You know, you need a plug, and there isn't one. So we talk about chargers, and there's kind of two kinds that I think are worth speaking about. One is something like, and it's an older style one that's been around for a while, like a Ninja Bat or one of the off-brand things. It's, you know, I would say, you know, maybe a square foot or a little less than that. It's got a standard 110 volt, 300 or more watt plug in the front of it, as well as USB ports, and they usually will also have something like a car charger port and maybe even some strange DC barrel plug charger ports, which, to be honest, I have no idea what those are for or what you could possibly ever plug into them, but they seem to like to say, hey, we have multiple charging things. So those are good in that they will hold a lot of charge, and you can run something like a laptop off of that all day long without killing its battery, you know, easily 8 hours or more. You can throw that in the back seat of the car, plug your standard laptop charger into it, and just go to town. And then you just plug it into the wall anywhere. Foot of the bed doesn't matter, you know, just somewhere you find a plug. It could be, I guess, technically in the bathroom, even if you're careful not to, you know, spray water on it. Just charge it up overnight. The downside is it's big and they're heavy. They're not light. They probably weigh 15 pounds, 10, 15 pounds. But if you're driving, the weight doesn't matter that much because it's just sitting in the car, and it gets you a lot of time on laptops, even up to the newer ones that are using 200 watts, 250 watts to charge. You don't have a problem. You can charge it off of this. So that can be pretty good, and I think you can get those for under $200 now. The newer thing that's come along though is as you have the ultra portable laptops, and I'm thinking things like the X1 Carbon from Lenovo or like MacBook Air, things that are charging off USB-C already and are probably drawing 65 watts is common. You can get these pretty cool Anker power banks. I think they're under $100. They have 100-watt fast charging ports as well as 20-watt ones for your phones. And they're, I don't know, maybe like this big and kind of square, like a square tube. And I guess they weigh maybe a pound, probably less than a pound, but not a lot less. And that's great because you can stick it in like a larger jacket pocket, or if you're like me and have like men's pants with like large pockets, they can fit in one of those pockets. You can throw it in a backpack, no problem. And it'll charge your laptop up like one full recharge basically. And again, I'm talking about my experience with Lenovo X1 Carbons, but I think that's pretty similar for any of those kind of laptops. And so when you're going on these kind of trips, if you have that extra recharge in there, now you can get more time working on the laptop and you don't have to worry about your battery going dead. So that's pretty important and a way to work during the day.